So much for that, Arunima. And with that, we are shifting our focus. We have got this next piece of breaking news on the broadcast. Let's now take a look at that. And this is to do with Gopal Kanda. Delhi court has acquitted ex-Haryana Minister Gopal Kanda in the air hostess suicide case. In fact, CNN News 18 has now exclusively accessed the order copy of this particular case, and the charges against Gopal Kanda have not been proven. That's what we are learning through this order copy. And there is a possibility of Geetika Sharma dying by suicide after having a quarrel with her mother, because Kanda and Aruna informed the mother of her pregnancy and subsequent abortion. These are the details that we are learning through the order copy that CNN News 18 has managed to access. Remember, the ex-Haryana minister Gopal Kanda was in fact acquitted in the 2012 air hostess suicide case. We also understand that the Delhi court ended up acquitting the former Haryana minister in the case of abetment to suicide of Deepika's, because there was a lack of evidence in this particular case. When it is about cases where when it is to do with abetment to suicide, this has become a normal state of affairs unless and until there is a solid evidence that can be garnered against the accused. In this case, the Delhi court had to end up acquitting Gopal Kanda, former Haryana minister. In this case, the special judge Vikas Dhool acquitted Gopal Kanda and his associate Aruna Chadha, who we were talking about, of all the charges, including abetment of suicide, criminal conspiracy, also destruction of evidence and forgery. All of these charges have been done away with. In fact, the court also asked Gopal Kanda to submit about 1 lakh rupees in personal bond and remain present if the police filed an appeal against his acquittal. That is also something that we are learning, and now we also have the order copy that also suggests that the court had to end up acquitting both Gopal Kanda and his associate because no guilt was really proven against him. In fact, my colleague Ridhima is joining us from the newsroom. She has the order copy with her. Ridhima, what does it say?
Ray, as you rightly pointed out, this is a case that dates back to 2012, and as again you rightly pointed out, the court saying the prosecution has in fact failed to prove their charges against Gopal Kanda, which has led to his acquittal. What is also interesting is the reaction that is coming from Gopal Kanda, where he in fact has gone on to say that we had been saying this is a made-up, fabricated case from day one. But what is also interesting is this entire order copy that we've exclusively accessed here on CNN News 18. It's almost a 200-page order copy, 189 to be specific. But if you scroll down to the most operative parts, that's where I want to bring the attention of our viewers. The first point, as you were also pointing out, was the court's now suggesting that there is a possibility that someone who was close to Geetika in fact instigated her, which led to her taking that very unfortunate step of her dying by suicide. And this is exactly what is mentioned in the order copy as well. It says the possibility of accused A2 Aruna Chadha and of accused A1 Gopal Kanda disclosing the fact to the mother of deceased Geetika Sharma in a telephonic conversation on 3rd of September in 2012, respectively, being the well-wishers of the family or out of jealousy, which possibly led to a quarrel between the mother of the deceased Geetika Sharma and deceased Geetika Sharma on her return from Mumbai. So the court pointing out that one aspect that needs to be looked into is that somebody close to Geetika instigated her to take that step. Secondly, there was possibly a fight or a quarrel that broke out between Geetika and her mother, which also led her to take this very unfortunate step. But I want to now move to the other aspect, which is once again being mentioned as far as the order copy is concerned, and which is as far as the role of the investigating officials and the police officers involved in the call. They speak about particular phone calls and conversations that happened that needed to be possibly looked into further depth. Let me read out that part as well. It further goes on to say it has also come to light in the cross-examination of IO Inspector Dinesh Kumar by accused Gopal Kanda that as per the call detail record of deceased Geetika Sharma, around 6 calls were exchanged from the mobile number of Geetika Sharma, out of which 3 calls were made to her brother Ankit. Regarding the remaining 3 calls, there is no investigation that was made by him. So that's a lapse that has been pointed out as far as this order copy is also concerned. And the second lapse that is also pointed out is it further says it was imperative for the IO to have investigated those 3 calls, out of which 2 calls were from the same mobile number. So court basically listing out a whole list of lapses that resulted in the acquittal as far as Gopal Kanda is concerned. 3 things that they've pointed out before I hand this back to you. One, that possibly somebody who is close to Geetika instigated her, which led her to take this unfortunate step. Secondly, there could have been a quarrel between Geetika and her mother. And thirdly, is this lack of investigation as far as the final calls that were made by Geetika before she took this very unfortunate step.
Right. Important points that you've listed out for us. Ridhima, thank you so much for that. Let me actually take this across to Ananya, who's also joining us live on the broadcast. Ananya, this third aspect that my colleague Ridhima was also mentioning, lack of proper investigation or probably lapses in the investigation by the investigation officer, has been pointed out in this order copy. How further is this going to be a deterrent in this aspect now that there can be a possible appeal by Geetika's family against the acquittal?
Well, definitely there can be, appeal by Geetika's family if they want to actually challenge this particular acquittal of Gopal Kanda and Aruna Chadha into this particular case. But we have to also see that, there are various questions that were also raised on the conduct of Geetika's family itself. It has been said that, the calls that Geetika's mother made, in fact, to Geetika right prior to her, death and even after staying in the same, house, are raising suspicion. But at the same point of time, nothing has been disclosed about these calls by Geetika's father to the police or not even in the cross-examination they have mentioned it. Apart from that, various questions have been raised that, the court says that other circumstances could have led to Geetika's death, to Geetika committing suicide as well, is that, various aspects are discussed, just like her brother's part is also discussed, her mother's part is also discussed. So we'll have to see if Geetika's family would take this particular step, but definitely this is something that is a very important point arising out of this particular court order, that, though Gopal Kanda and Aruna Chadha did not have, in fact, a role to play in Geetika's committing suicide, but at the same point of time, suspicion also has been raised, and in fact questions have been raised on the police's investigation into this particular case. So whether the police would be preferring an appeal into this particular case is something that is also raises a big question mark, and whether the Geetika's family would make an appeal before the court is something that we'll have to wait and watch for before the High Court of Delhi.
And while we talk about that appeal, impending one from Geetika's family there, Ananya, the entire aspect of that possible quarrel that Geetika might have had with her mother, which has also been presented by way of this order copy, how much of that will be another aspect that the family needs to consider? Because if that led to her dying by suicide, that also is a huge point to make here.
Well, definitely it's a huge point to make, but we'll have to see how that appeal is particularly drafted, if at all it's being filed by the family, because remember that in such cases, majorly it's the police that actually files an appeal challenging an acquittal order. If you remember what had happened in Sunanda Pushkar death case also, it was the Delhi police who had knocked the doors of the Delhi High Court challenging the acquittal of Mr. Shashi Tharoor in that particular case. But at the same point of time, we'll have to wait for all of that to happen, and we'll have to see how and under what circumstances would either the family of Geetika or the Delhi police would move a challenge to this acquittal that has been there in this. But remember that this order that goes on into almost 180 pages is something that is a very, very well reasoned order, and in fact not only the circumstances pertaining to Geetika's suicide as per the prosecution, but also various other circumstances have been discussed by the court. So we'll have to see how a challenge to this particular order is made and what happens next into this legal battle, which is still continuing at some point of time.
Right.